Ishtar Gardens of Babylon. I saw this game being presented at Gen Con 2019. There was a lot of buzz about it. People were very excited. I stopped by and I filmed an overview. Maybe you saw that video. Finally, also got to play the game. So now I can give you a more detailed review. I can show you how the game works and I can share my opinions and ideas. In this game, we're going to collect tiles and put them down on a board, creating certain patterns and trying to control certain areas. There's a Carcassonne-ish feel to it, but frankly, Carcassonne, like Catan, it's a game that I found amazing when it came out, groundbreaking. Catan was the groundbreaking game of, I guess, set collection. Carcassonne of tiling, but I found both of them a little dated by now. Ishtar is Carcassonne 2.0. It has some of the fun element that you have there, but I find more streamlined, more intuitive, and less cerebral when it comes to scoring things. But before I anticipate all my conclusions here in the introduction of my video, let me show how Ishtar works. The game is played on a modular board like the one that you see here. It is made of these hexagonal elements, and the number of elements that you use depends on the number of players, and you can experiment with different shapes, different configurations, different orientations, so a lot of variety there. There are 6 fountains that go on specific spaces on the board. They're in different colors, so purple, 3 of them, but they are less valuable if you control them in terms of victory points. Red, more valuable, and white, the most valuable if you control it, and there's only 1. You also place those gems on the board in the positions indicated by the gems on the board itself. And again, they're not in the same number. A lot of purple, less valuable, fewer red, more valuable, fewer still white gems, the most valuable ones. Then we have a rondel of vegetation tiles. During the game, the players will move the watering can and will purchase the tile that the watering can is on. I'll give you more details later. Each player has a personal board where you store the gems. You start with a purple gem. You start with 2 apprentices. There are 2 more that you may be able to acquire during the game. Place here and then place on the board. And here you have upgrades. During the game, you'll have chances of purchasing those upgrades. To acquire an upgrade, you need to place 2 gems on it, and you get the advantage indicated by the icon. If you want to acquire one of the advantages indicated in the top row, you need to first have acquired the one below. And so you need to go in order like that. And later, maybe I want to get this upgrade and then later this one. It's always 2 gems, no matter the kinds of gems that you use. The icons in the bottom row will give you extra actions, extra resources, whereas the upgrades on top will give you extra ways of scoring. We have cards representing trees. During the game, you'll be able to buy those cards by spending the number and type of gems indicated on top of the card. When that happens, you take the tree and you place it on the board. You also acquire the card that goes in your personal scoring pile, and you'll score it at the end of the game. That is the number of points that is worth. Now, during a turn structure, at the beginning of your turn, the first thing that you do is you must acquire and place a new vegetation tile. The first thing that you do is you move the watering can when it's your turn by 1 space clockwise. And you can then acquire the tile from the top tile from the pile the watering can is on. You can acquire that for free. If you want to get another tile, you can move the watering can, but the cost is 1 gem per space that you're moving it. And suppose, for example, I spend a gem because I really want that tile, and I get it. You know what? Actually, I like that one, so I'm going to take that one. When I acquire a tile, then I flip the next one face up so people know what's available, and then I need to place it on the board immediately before I do anything else. Placement rules. A new vegetation tile needs to be adjacent to a fountain or to a previous vegetation tile. So the vegetation tiles will spread from the fountains, which really makes sense thematically. When I place down a vegetation tile, it cannot cover one of these sacred tablets. It can cover gems, and in fact, I will want my vegetation tiles to cover gems because that allows me to pick up all of the gems that I covered. And maybe later, something like this happens. Now, a couple of other concepts about vegetation tiles. Flower beds are areas of these darker circles here that are adjacent to one another. So for example, here we have a flower bed which is two areas in size, and this is one area flower bed. Gardens are a single area of vegetation tiles that are connected, and they can include multiple flower beds. Now, super important, the gardens originating from one fountain cannot touch the fountains nor merge with gardens originating from other fountains. This is very important because during the game you may be able to place things, and you will want to place things precisely to prevent the expansion of other players. Say for example, this is the case, I could not place this one because it would connect those two fountains, but also I cannot connect this one because it would connect the garden originating from here with the garden originating from there. Not cool. During the game, you will also place your apprentices. An apprentice is placed on a flower bed and is set to control the flower bed. There can only be 0 or 1 assistant on a flower bed ever. No more, no less. Yeah, because you can have less than 0. I don't even know what that means. So, another important thing because of that is that, I suppose that we have that apprentice there. So an apprentice on a flower bed will control the flower bed. So you cannot place tiles in a way that will make flower beds controlled by different apprentices merge. That means, for example, that I could totally place this tile here, expanding this flower bed because it's not controlled, but I would not be able to place this tile here because it would merge the flower beds controlled by these two, and now there's a flower bed which is 5 areas large, but it has 2 apprentices, which is not allowed. An apprentice in a flower bed is set to control that flower bed. Also, the player that controls the most flower bed spaces around a fountain is set to be controlling that fountain. Right now, for example, there is a tie because both players control a flower bed that is size 2, but later, clever purple player does this, and now that player is controlling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so that player is controlling the fountain, as opposed to this other player here. So you are placing those tiles because you want to, well, get flower beds with all the flowers. There'll be points in the end of the game that are flower beds that are large, so you control the fountains, and also you are playing them in a way that you are possibly preventing the opponent from expanding, from doing different things. Suppose that later, for example, I use an upgrade this one to place this flower bed here on a space. That would be great because that would allow me to still increase my flower bed there, also expanding my influence to that one. Now I'm controlling a really large one. However, something that the players can do is to use these trees when they'll plant them. I'll tell you why, to block things precisely from expanding, different flower beds from merging. Because again, remember, you cannot merge control flower beds, but you can merge a controlled flower bed with a non-controlled one. You can also merge non-controlled flower beds with non-controlled flower beds, like that would be the case. That is non-controlled and is still not controlled. This is also very important because when you put on a vegetation tile, that does not mean that automatically you'll get to play an apprentice. So it may entirely be that in fact you place down a tile, you collect the gems, very good, but you don't get to place an apprentice there, and then maybe later it will be indeed someone else to do precisely. So, and here comes sneaky player with the yellow meeples that does precisely so. Now, you collected your tile from the rondel, remember that? And then you placed it following those placement rules. After you do so and you collect your gems, you may be able to perform a special action if the tile that you placed has one of those icons. The icon with the apprentice tells you that you are allowed to put one of your apprentices on the board if you have one stored in your personal area. There is another symbol, where is it? This one, that allows you to acquire an upgrade if you decide to do so, and you have the gems to do so. Remember, these are the upgrades here on your personal board. And then the mystery icon means that you can use that as any icon, as either placing an apprentice or using acquiring an upgrade. Finally, after you've done that, if the situation applies and you decide to do so, again, you have the option of planting a tree. That is when, if you have the gems and you decide to spend them to do so, you can acquire a card, pay the gem, put the card face down in the victory pile, that is what it's worth, and then you place the tree on the board. Which we said, interesting enough, the tree can be used to block other people's expansions, but plot twist, if you do it so much or too much to the opponents, you may regret it, because then they may acquire this upgrade here, which will score, oh, that's an upgrade, yeah, actually, that will score victory points for flower beds that you have that are adjacent to trees. So trees can be both an obstacle and a boon depending on how they are used. So the game sounds complicated because it sounds like I have many phases in a turn, but the basic phase that you always do is acquire a tile and place it. Then chances are you'll acquire some gems, so you can choose. If you had the option to also put down an apprentice or acquire an upgrade, you may choose to buy a tree, but the basic idea is get a tile, place down a tile. As the game progresses, the place will become increasingly claustrophobic. Players probably will want to fight for valuable fountains, especially the white one, which is worth more points. And the game continues like this until 2 stacks of tiles on the rondel have been exhausted. At that point, ensure that everybody has the same number of turns, and you do final scoring. Final scoring, you score the 3 cards that you collected during the game, adding together the points that they are worth it. You score victory points for each flower in the flower beds that you control. 4, 6, and 8 victory points for controlling purple, red, and white fountains respectively. Remember, you control it if your apprentices control the most flower beds in gardens connected to a fountain. Then you score points according to your unlocked skills or upgrades, the one on your personal board. Well, and you total all of your points, and at that point the player with the highest score is the winner of the game. I like this game a lot, and everybody in my group really liked it. We're already planning to play it again next game night, because it is a game that, I don't know, when I teach it sounds more complicated than it is. When you play it, you realize that it's even simpler than Carcassonne, and everybody who is into games enough to be watching my videos can play Carcassonne. It is more intuitive. more streamlined, but I also believe deeper. I like the options that I have here much more than in Carcassonne, and at the end I don't need to get a PhD in math to be able to score the game, which I sometimes feel that would help when I'm playing Carcassonne. Ishtar, you have some really interesting elements here. The rondel gives me the possibility of, well, having more choices, but they come at a cost. Right there, something that I like. Interesting decisions, but with an appropriate cost. That right there turns into elements of gameplay that incentivize good gameplay and make making good decisions interesting and bad decisions scary. So you have that element. You can, of course, invest those gems in buying those skills and upgrades. Very interesting thing. But then because of that, you don't have the gems to do other things, such as, again, paying for certain tiles on the rondel or paying for the trees, which can be very powerful because of the points that you score, because of the possibility of using those trees to block someone else, unless then they turn into ways of scoring for them, but then maybe for you too. There are just many things that you can do with those gems, and you will never have enough gems to do all that you want, which is excellent in terms of game design because it results in interesting and tough decisions. You will never be able to do all that you want on the board because you want your gardens to be awesome, your flower beds to be powerful, and at the same time you want to block the opponent. And to me, the placement of the tiles really is, I was going to say the core of the game, but I think there's a perfect balance here between the management of resources, those gems, never enough, and at the same time, the spatial puzzle that you have here. I've seen people online complain that the game feels like multiplayer solo. Not in my group. Not in my group. No one is ever thinking, oh, I really want to do my little garden and we're going to be very proud of that. Everybody's thinking, how can I get a good garden while I get in someone else's way, while I block someone else's area. And so you have these gardens that stretch in all directions. At the same time, I don't want to get out of my way just to block you in a way that makes my flower beds not as powerful, that does not give me enough gems, because if I run out of those, then I get stuck with tiles that I don't want. You're scoring trees and I'm not. So every move, the moves are so simple. Get a tile, maybe you pay for it or not, and put it down. But there are just so many things that you're doing at the same time. Managing your gems, trying to get new gems, getting powerful flower beds, getting the icons for the actions that you need, because what's a flower bed if you don't have an apprentice on it? Someone else's way of scoring points. And you're trying so to create your flower beds and the gardens and to connect flower beds to your advantage, and at the same time to block possibly other people's gardens and flower beds, and figure out where to plant those trees to block someone or to score more points. That's a remarkable number of things that you're doing when you pick up a tile and you put it down. And to me, that is the hallmark of good modern gameplay, of elegant gameplay. To me, elegant gameplay is something that gives me a lot to think about, a lot of interesting interactions with as few rules as possible. And this game, Ishtar, definitely is an elegant, minimalistic game. When you look at the production, it doesn't look minimalistic at all. It looks very pretty. I have players that just lose their mind when they see all those gems. They just get fascinated by those. It looks pretty, the production is excellent, and so you have the visual appeal, even the tactile appeal as you're moving things around. You have the nice connection with those components that are fun to manipulate, and at the same time you have this like beautiful production which is connected with the simple, intuitive, yet really rewarding gameplay, incredibly elegant. Lot to think about in terms of strategy, not a lot to worry about in terms of rules. This is just, again, good, very good actually. This is what I want in games of this kind. I may play very heavy thematic games and I'm okay to learn an extra rule if it allows me to have an extra layer of detail in the representation. But when it comes to fairly abstract games, Eurogame-ish games like this one, what I want is elegant, simplicity, and deep gameplay. emerging from simple rules. Ishtar does all of that. The fact that it does it with really attractive components does not hurt at all. In general, Ishtar has definitely my approval. 2 big thumbs up or 2 big trees up or whatever might be appropriate, because I had a really good time playing Ishtar. I can't wait to play it again. Definitely we're gonna play this game night, friends of mine that are watching, so you already know what we're gonna play, because Ishtar is really, really fun.